Episode 5. You wrote the SOP, but could you last a shift? How real leaders reconnect with the grind and reconnect with the work that built your team's respect. Hey everyone, welcome back to The Turnaround. I'm Natalie Flores, and this show is here to help managers go from short-staffed to stand out and become the kind of leader people want to stay for. And how, you may ask? Well, we're going to do that by reducing turnover with integrity, clear communication, smart scheduling, and patience. SOPs, the three-letter acronym that most people have no idea what it even stands for. And for those of you who do, that moment someone actually does bring it up, you can practically feel the collective eye roll in the group. Don't worry, I was once in your shoes. I had no idea what an SOP was, or honestly, I didn't even know that I had already been following them, and on top of that, I didn't even know I was creating them. For the most part, a lot of us just don't know that they had a title to go with it. You know, SOPs are usually just, it's how things are going, your protocol, training, everything that's down on paper that says what you should and should not do. That's going to be an SOP. And yes, in case you were wondering, every workplace has them, and every workplace enforces them. But how they're enforced, both verbally and practically, are usually the two areas where many managers, or even the team as a whole, just completely miss the mark. And this is often where lanes are crossed, and where we end up being the manager who's annoyed with their team because you just can't understand why they just can't fucking get it. Well, as many wise people say, walk a mile in their shoes, and today we're going to do just that. Talking the talk and walking the walk, as we know, are two very different actions, although we expect the same outcome from both. Achieving that requires a different type of work ethic for each, and we rarely take that into consideration. You know, each is unique, and because of that, that's where the misunderstanding and our old friends' disappointment and frustration usually like to jump on in and tag along. Talking the talk, that's going to require it's going to require your mental presence. And as Dr. Angela Duckworth explains in her book, Grit, these are the three most common mindsets leadership tend to have. So number one is going to be the fixed mindset. That's going to be your comfort zone leader. And their core belief is, this is just how I am. I've been doing it for years. And boy, do they love explaining to you their whole resume. Or they're going to be the managers that are just kind of like in cruise control, you know, clock in, I'm here, I'm clocking out type of a person. Number two is the growth mindset, the integrity builder. And their core belief is, I can learn, improve, and adapt, and so can my team. This type of manager is still rare to come across, but we are seeing a shift in that. Thank goodness. And these are the managers who are capable of listening and hearing their team, and they know that what changes need to be made so that things can be better. And they are able to learn from not only from their team's mistake, but also from their own. And again, this is rare, but I believe we will be seeing more of this in the future for sure. This is becoming the new expectation in the workplace. And finally, number three, it's going to be the purpose mindset. Those are your legacy leaders. Their core belief is, my work matters because it impacts something bigger than me. These are your unicorn managers. And these are the ones that are usually going to stick with you forever, whether it be you working with them or they will constantly be the example you hold with you in terms of what is truly possible in the workplace and how you can really turn things around. And I've had a few of those, and it's true. They just stick with you forever. Now, SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedure. The key word here is standard. Basically, the person creating the SOP is setting up the house rules for the company, how things get done, and so on. That's why it's standard, because it's meant to be just straightforward. The second key word is operating. That's where the talk-to-talk mindset comes into play. As the manager, your responsibility is to show and explain to everyone how things are run and what the expectations are. And this is kind of where things start to get a little bit rocky. It's in that zone where one of these 3 mindsets that I just explained are going to show up. So depending on your management style, which is heavily influenced by your mindset, you'll fall into one of those 3 categories. And that's where we start to see the walk-to-walk disconnect. And our final and last keyword is going to be procedure. That's usually where things start to fall through the cracks and where a lot of the frustration and problems, just start to form. All right, so you're hearing this, you're like, yeah, I know. But I wrote the SOP, and I know you did. I'm sure you did a great job. But even though you wrote the SOP, could you actually last a shift? Because those 2 things are very different. And although you might be quick to say, yes, the real answer is not really. Sure, if something isn't broken, don't fix it. But even things that work still need to be checked, updated, and reviewed. Not just for your team, but also for you. And yes, I'm talking about the SOP. Now, because of how much time it takes to make an SOP, it's very much so like a set it and forget it type of situation. But one thing we need to start getting into the habit of is we need to make sure those SOPs are meeting the standards of the workplace and the world that they are kind of living in. Not just the demand of the company, because in order to meet the demand of the company, you need to make sure it's working in the world that it's in. Leadership looks a lot different when you've been out of the weeds for a while. Yes, you're probably there all the time, maybe even, 5 to 6 days a week, working those so wonderful 10 to 12 hour shifts. But the truth is, you're not really present when you're there for that long. Maybe physically, but definitely not mentally. And I say that respectfully. You're there that long because you're just putting out fires instead of creating ways to make your system fireproof. The systems, the expectations, the shortcuts, they all evolve while you're busy managing. So instead of running around like a chicken with its head cut off, how about we take that walk I'm talking about? In this episode of The Turnaround, we're getting to the core of the disconnect between management and the floor and how to close the gap without blame. Because leadership that lasts isn't built only on policies, it's built on perspective, empathy, and respect. Walk a mile in your team's shoes. Relearn the work, rebuild the respect. And now you're probably wondering, okay, but how can I walk with my team? Well, get into their reality. Work a shift with them. And I mean really work a shift with them. Don't just tag along for an hour and then walk away because you're being pulled into another, fire that's going on. Genuinely work with them. For perspective, act as if you were a new hire being trained for the job. Don't correct the teammate who's training you. Come in with a new hire mindset and have multiple people train you over a few days. This will help you truly understand just what kind of system you really have and whether the system needs updating or honestly just like a full reset. Think of it kind of like an undercover boss, except you're just not undercover and you get to see things from each team member's position and their perspective. Because trust me, I have definitely been in a position and very cautiously judged the other person in a different position, thinking, why aren't they doing these things? And then I work in their position. I'm like, oh, wow, that's why. So you get so much out of doing that. And it builds so much understanding, rapport, and respect. And I really encourage you to do the same. And just because we all have stories, here's a little quick one. One time at one of the jobs that I was a manager at, it was a large event space and it had live entertainment and the place was huge. And, a huge event space, there's going to be food, drinks, and of course, with all those things, there's going to be a mess. That's because in hospitality, we create the fun and then we clean it up. At the time, I was the GM, and in a meeting, one of the owners asked if we could, spot clean the outside seating platform, and if we could add that to our opening procedures. There was food and beverage stains on the cement, and he wanted just to improve the cleanliness, And I told him, yeah, that's super valid, and I understood, and I agreed. But even though I agreed, I made sure it was logically possible. My boss talked the talk. He shared the new standard, And now it's my turn to walk the walk. That meant understanding the expectation and creating a way to make that expectation realistic. Sure, filling a bucket, adding soap, grabbing a deck brush, and spot cleaning a warehouse-length walking path sounds simple, but it's not simple when your current opening shift has only a 30-minute window to prep everything, and there's just 2 people on the shift, and one of them is a manager, and they're setting up the system and registers, and the other person is running around doing everything else. So that simple request quickly becomes unrealistic because of time. And the reason I knew this was because before I enforced this new task, and yes, my standards back then were not perfect, so bear with me, but I did come in on my day off, and I showed up at the same time as an opener would, and I did this new task by myself. Why? Because I just wanted to see if the request was actually possible. I wanted to see if it was within reason and doable within the same opening time frame. And this is what I learned. The request was possible. The request was within reason. The request could be added to the opening procedures, but it could not be done within the current 30-minute opening window. So the big takeaway was, it's possible if we increase our opening time by an extra 30 minutes. I timed myself doing the task, and that timing became the key takeaway for the ultimate decision of making this request possible. You can't improve your system if you don't understand how long the work actually takes. By doing this, I was able to make an informed change without burdening my team and creating unnecessary stress through unrealistic expectations. I mean, come on, how many times do we have a boss say, hey, do this new thing, and you're like, what are you doing? Do you not understand how long that's gonna take? And usually the answer is no, because that's the reason why they threw it on you in the first place, because they didn't take that into consideration. And that is the ultimate wrench we see in the workplace. So I wanted to make sure that I walked in their shoes before I was asking them to take the journey. And to me, that's what true leadership looks like. Adding a new task to someone's workload without understanding how it impacts their current workload, that's one of the most common mistakes in leadership. That's where our little friend, frustration and disappointment love to show up. Because yes, you and I both know the task is possible, but what makes it impossible is the time you've given them or yourself to do it. If you want to make it realistic, you have to adjust the system to support success, even if that means extending your opening time by 30 minutes. If that's what needs to be done, then that is what shall be done. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Could you actually last a shift under the same conditions you expect from your team? If the honest answer is no, that's not failure, okay? That's your opportunity to reconnect, rebuild, and re-lead from the ground up. Because when you don't, that's where the disconnect starts. When we set expectations we've never tested out ourselves, you're setting yourself up for failure, really. Now, depending on the type of workplace that you work in, if it's like a busy restaurant, a busy event planning place, if there's just a lot going on and there's never that moment within your working place where you guys are able to just sit down and be like, all right, let's reevaluate just what we're doing, that's where you stop to realize just how much has changed because you're just stuck managing from the middle instead of leading from the ground up. Those are the times where if you do work in a fast-paced environment, those are the places you really need to cut out time to just stop and reevaluate because it's desperately needed, especially for the pace that you're going at. Because working in a fast-paced environment is possible, but if it's not being, checked in on, race cars have a pit stop for a reason, so you got to make yours too. And that's what this next part is just all about. How to make your pit stop, how to reconnect, rebuild, and lead in a way that actually works for people who make it all happen. And that's your team. Okay, now that I'm all jazzed up, I'm ready to take this walk with you. Let's do leadership from the ground up. We're reframing leadership as proximity, not position. Leadership from the ground up isn't about where you stand, it's about how close you're willing to get. When you see what your team sees, you stop managing from theory and you start leading from truth. This is proximity leadership, where empathy meets execution. If you can't see what your people see, you can't fix what they face. Get curious before you get critical. If your team isn't following the SOP, it's probably not out of defiance. It's because they're just adapting. They're doing what actually works to get the job done. And you need to understand that. SOPs and systems, they drift over time, not because anyone's lazy, but because the world just keeps changing and people adapt much faster than paperwork. Teams will find their own shortcuts. They're going to make those quick fixes and create new rhythms just to survive. And that's not rebellion. They're just being resourceful. And having that type of just perspective and mindset, I think is going to really help you kind of get through the shift and manage your team a lot better. So before you start to get that little urge to write someone up because they did something that was quote unquote out of line or not in the SOP, take a deep breath and a huge step back. Hopefully this isn't you, but instead of going your normal route of, attacking or using that moment as a hard lesson to show the team, slow your pace, man. Slow your roll. Walk through that moment instead. Use it to understand, why it happened. Why did they do that? And write it down and write down what the real takeaway is from that situation. And don't do it just for them, but also do it for you and for the system itself. Because again, your team's going to adapt much faster than the paperwork. So if you can write down what's actually going on and what's on paper, put those two side by side, you are going to find your answer. And I mean like the answer for change. And being able to do that, that's going to help you gain your team's trust back. And it's going to keep the respect or rebuild it, depending on what type of situation you're in, instead of losing both of them because you're over here jumping to conclusions. So shadow a shift, run a section, take on one task, start to finish, before you implement it or make it live. When you experience inefficiencies firsthand, it becomes so much easier to make those necessary changes before you fully implement a new standard. It's a lot harder to make those changes when you just throw in a new rule without really running it logically. And here's the key. Yes, you technically do have to run that new standard during a live shift to see how it's really going to play out, what hurdles you're going to come up against. But it's best that you do it first and you figure out what needs to be fixed rather than just throwing it on your team and then they're the ones trying to figure it out. And then you're both frustrated with each other. Like, those are the type of situations I constantly bring up that could have been avoided. The reason why I strongly encourage to do this, one, during a live shift and you doing it on your own first, because if you try to test this out before, the restaurant opens, it's just not going to work because, the system is going to work perfectly, maybe even flawlessly, if nobody's there. Yeah, of course. So you can even do both. Test it out before people are there, just to see if the steps make sense, and then test it out when people are actually there. Because that's going to be your real world. That's going to be your reality. And that reality is going to let you know if that new standard you're trying to throw in is going to survive or not. So if that is something you're going to be doing soon, or it's something that's going to be coming down the pipeline at some point, I strongly advise to do this little test run, okay? Test it out with just you. Test it out during a live shift or during an actual project, just to see if, does the system make sense? Or are my people just holding it together because I threw in a wrench without even realizing it? And if it's the second one, they don't need more rules, they just need more clarity, and they need your respect. Now, I'm sure at this point you're probably thinking, you need to burn all of your SOPs and start completely from scratch. No, please don't. Like I said earlier, if something isn't broken, don't fix it. But even the things that, work still need to be checked on, updated, and reviewed. Not just for your team, but also for you. The worst thing you can do, whether you have been with a company for one day or for many years, is to just gut everything and start from zero. Please don't do that. Okay, that's like the highest level of disrespect. And it shows that you're just not willing to listen or even learn from the current or new system. So trust me, that's not the impression you want to give off, especially if you're new. Please don't. Understand your environment first, okay? Don't just come in chopping trees. Now, if there's no SOPs, that's a different story. But for now, let's act civilized and assume we've got something written down. And if you've ever written one, you know SOPs are no joke. It's an intense process, but totally worth it. Still, no one wants to write one from scratch. So don't make your life and your team's life harder than it needs to be. On that note, start with what you already have, okay? Dust off that SOP or that training manual. They're basically the same thing, and start taking notes. Those notes are your takeaways. And I actually made something for you that I think is going to help you. I created a notebook and a couple little sticky note sets, so you have a dedicated place to write those takeaway downs. You can keep these in your pocket. These things are going to be pocket size, so I think it's perfect. It doesn't take up a lot of space. When these moments do come up, you have a place to jot it down instead of writing it down on a random napkin or receipt paper and crumbling it back up in your pocket and then finding it way too late. Having it in a nice little place where you know that every time you hit it when you reach your pocket, you're like, oh yeah, this is what I need to circle back on. I made your takeaway moments just a little bit easier to find, because those quick notes that you capture in the moment, that's where better systems are born. Now, if you're still wondering what to focus on or what to look for, I've got a few free guides that go hand in hand with this process. You don't have to fill them out if you don't want to. It's totally up to you. But they'll help you get in the right mindset and notice the areas that might be accidentally looked over. They'll also help you see from a fresh perspective. And the guides that I made for you that you can reference, I have this one. It's called the Balance Blueprint. This is going to help you schedule smarter and not longer. So this is going to help you have a more balanced team, and your SOPs are also going to have more consistency based off of the schedule. Number 2 is the Integrity Playbook. This is going to show you how to build incentives that actually stick, because when standards are rooted in integrity, your team just doesn't follow them. They believe in them. And last but not least, I have my mini management reflection guide. This is going to help you pause, realign, and reconnect with how your leadership style actually impacts your team. Because no system works if the person leading isn't self-aware. So use these tools together. They'll help you simplify your outdated SOPs, create realistic timelines, balance the workload, and build feedback loops that don't fade after one meeting. Integrity isn't just honesty. It's alignment between what we expect and what people actually experience. This is how you rebuild what you learn, not just by starting over, but by building smarter with balance, reflection, and integrity leading the way. Okay, I've held on to you long enough. So, you wrote the SOP, but could you last a shift? The truth is, none of us can if we don't take time to step back and reconnect with the people who help us make it all work. When you slow down long enough to walk beside your team, and not in front of them, and not behind them, but with them, you start to see things differently. You see how much they carry, you notice where the system trips them up, and you realize that real change doesn't come from rewriting the rules, it comes from rejoining the rhythm. Leadership isn't about surviving the longest shift, it's about creating an environment where everybody can. And sometimes that means taking one intentional step back to observe, to listen, to understand. So when you do step forward again, it's with purpose, empathy, and direction. Because when your team feels that you truly get what their day-to-day looks like, that's when trust starts to rebuild. That's when respect becomes real. And that's when leadership starts to feel a little less like pressure and more like partnership. Thanks for tuning into The Turnaround. If this episode resonated with you, hit subscribe and stay connected. And hey, make sure you're on my email list. You'll get updates on upcoming episodes, quick recaps of past discussions, exclusive sneak peeks at the tools I'm building to help managers just create a better workplace, and a few surprises along the way. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming up next. Let's keep building workplaces where people want to be in. Real change doesn't happen when you rewrite the rules. It happens when you rejoin the work. And when you walk with your team, you build the kind of trust no policy could ever create. So until next time, lead with integrity. And remember, the glass isn't half full or half empty. Sometimes it's just broken, and you're ready for an upgrade. Take care of yourself and take care of your team. You've got this. We'll see you soon. This episode is sponsored by the Mini Baker Co., miniature cakes for people and dogs. This podcast is also sponsored by Natalie Flores' voiceover services.